Broadcasting from Studio A here at Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. It's time for the Gardening Simplified Show with Stacy Hervella, me, Rick Weist, and our engineer and producer, Adriana Robinson. Well, Stacy, today we're going to talk about a monochromatic approach using shades of green. If there is a color that you could plant en masse monochromatically, green's probably the one. It would be your own secret forest. And I read recently that there are estimates that there are 200, maybe more than 300 different shades of green.
Ooh, I love that. I think I love every single one of them too. Green is my favorite color.
Is it really?
Yes, it really is. I mean, how could it not be?
Well,
I have certain colors that I like in the garden, certain colors I like to wear, certain colors I would have for, say, a car. But green is my favorite color for anything to do with like clothing, paint, cars, although I have no green cars, and so on.
I love it. Well, it's near the top of the list for me because green is a great color. You can zen out with a green plant until you feel calm. You can have something green on your dinner plate every night. You probably should. And green is associated with edible and ecological landscaping. And of course, I think back to the 1970s when I first got into the industry and the houseplant craze. During the 1970s, it was a time when everyone had avocado-colored kitchen appliances. The cars were avocado color. Even the shag carpeting in the house was avocado color. So we were into green back then.
You know, I do have to say, growing up as a child, little child in the 70s, I think that that's part of it. I do think that all of that avocado green just kind of like seeped into my psyche. And it is one of the reasons why I like it. I find it very comforting and it reminds me of being, a kid. We did have the avocado green appliances and the rusty orange ones too, but we're not doing an orange show today.
I think it was called Harvest Gold.
Harvest Gold.
Harvest Gold, yes. Well, anyhow, in flower beds, green performs a role for which it is uniquely suited, and that is peacekeeper. Green is just there, dependable, non-competitive, and a medley of hues can be reconciled by the presence of enough green foliage. I mean, often green is used as the background color or foundation plants for a landscape. But if you're using just green in a landscape, monotony is a threat, and you can overcome that with contrast. So you're going to want to look at mixing textures and contrasting shapes. I love stone paths through a green landscape. They really give great contrast.
And all the better if they get covered in moss and become green themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. So we're here to trumpet and praise the color green. As Kermit the Frog said, it's not easy being green. It seems you blend in with so many other ordinary things, and people tend to pass you over. So if you're thinking about a monochromatic green garden, shades of green, to make sure that your garden doesn't become a hodgepodge of every green cultivar you could get your hands on, make an effort to utilize repeated elements throughout the space. That's one thing you can do to create a unified picture. One way to make sure that, this is a trick that I like to use, one way to make sure that you're doing a good job of texture. So again, I think about a green garden and I think about the thin leaves of ornamental grasses dancing in the breeze, contrasted to the ruffled big foliage of, let's say, hostas. The best way to determine whether or not you're doing a good job so that it doesn't create a mottled look in your landscape, that you're using different shades of green but using texture well and repetition, go out there, shoot pictures in black and white.
Yeah, for sure.
Look at
Makes a
the
huge
pictures in black and white, and it's going to tell you a lot.
It really does. And in fact, last week's guest, Lisa Roper from Chanticleer Gardens, if you follow Chanticleer on social media, she will often post the same photo in black and white and in color to really help everyone to understand the textural things that are going on there. You know, the thing about a green garden, though, is I would bet that most of us probably have a pretty much all green garden at some point in the season. We may not be trying for it, but you know, I find for my garden, and it's just a matter mostly of what I have planted, but there is kind of this lull after the spring bulbs have faded, but it's not quite, hasn't been like quite warm enough for all of the late spring, early summer stuff to get going too soon. There's kind of this brief period where it is mostly green. And I mean, I am not complaining, but you don't have to try necessarily to make a green garden, but you do have to try to make a good green garden.
I think so too. And of course, we've had a show on spacing and layering of plants. That will be important if you're going to have a monochromatic green garden, because, you know, you can think about colors as bright as chartreuse and then get into some greens that are so dark they almost look black to my eye. But then mix into that also the contrast of the textures. Here's a point to argue. Should the plant leaves be touching or not? In other words, if you're using just a monochromatic look, maybe a little space between the plants is a good idea. Maybe not.
Maybe not. It really depends. You know, sometimes that space can kind of just turn into black holes too, and you don't really, you know. So that is mostly, I think, a matter of personal taste. But I like my plants to touch.
So from mosses and turf and ferns to giant evergreens, between those extremes, you're going to find endless variety. Don't plant too many of the same form together. I think that that's the key. Like I said, the dancing straps of ornamental grasses by the large leaves of hostas. I think that that's going to make a green garden work really well for you. So cool-toned greens leaning towards blue can be calming, while warm-toned greens leaning towards yellow can be more vibrant. Again, walking into a garden, or if I close my eyes, Stacy, I'm amazed at the number of shades of green that there are.
Oh, there are, especially at this time of year where everything has kind of changed and morphed, and the flowers and the flower buds. It's a great time for green.
The Latin word for green is viridis, so you'll often see the word viridescent in descriptions of plants, or you'll see the word verdant, derives from the French word for green. And then, of course, you know, you got to throw into the whole mix too, is there's many people who love a beautiful lawn and beautiful turf, and working that and the texture of it and the color into a monochromatic green landscape can be simply stunning. I wrote you a chlorophyll limerick. Chlorophyll, of course, is what makes our leaves green. Right?
Absolutely. That's why gardens are green.
My good friend Chlorophyll resides in Pleasantville. Not one to be brash and rarely will clash. His presence gets you to chill. The knock on Phil, in sum, is just green can be humdrum. In spring, their emergence is a blast. Phil and his friends, the chloroplasts, prove Phil's a genius green thumb. So it's not easy being green, not loud or brash, just serene. But my friend Chlorophyll can give you a thrill better than any drama queen.
You know, it's true in the Midwest, in the Northeast. We definitely take green for granted. Green is the color of our landscapes, but there are certainly places you can go in the United States where green is quite rare, and they would probably think of it as anything but humdrum because it is unusual. But yeah, for a lot of people here, they would say, oh, that garden's so boring, it's just green. Like, well, green's a color, thank you very much, and it is worth, you know, appreciating on its own merits.
Absolutely. And I think when you put a landscape like that together, a monochromatic green landscape, in my mind, in my mind's eye, the exclamation points are going to be very, very important. And there's so many great exclamation points. I'm excited in my landscape. I just planted the Sting Arborvitae. And these exclamation points, again, are going to give the eye an opportunity to rest as you scan across the landscape. So again, some repetition, but at the same time, really good contrast in both texture and style of plant and size will make all the difference if this is something you want to tackle.
And the cool thing about doing something with sting, which is an arborvitae, is you can use a kind of theme and variation idea.
Yes.
Get a bunch of other different arborvitaes of different sizes, and they're all going to have slightly different types of green in them, and then that unique texture of the foliage will really help to unite everything. That's a great plant to work with.
In segment 4, we'll give you some ideas on some plants you could use in your monochromatic green garden. But first, up next, we'll see how Stacy ties in this subject in Plants on Trial. That's next here on the Gardening Simplified Show.
Greetings, or should I say greenings, gardening friends, and welcome back to the Gardening Simplified Show, where the order of the day, if you missed us in segment 1, is all about the color green. And, a lot of people would mistakenly, I think, find green dull or boring, or if they go to a garden that's mostly green, they would say something like, oh, I guess this garden already flowered or hasn't flowered yet. That the main point of the garden is the colorful flowers and not the green foliage. But, the simple fact is you're not going to get colorful flowers without the green foliage, because that's making all the energy to produce the flowers.
That's right. I think you can create a garden that will make your neighbors green with ivy. I had to contrast your pun there, because that was a good one.
Well, hopefully they won't plant ivy, because English ivy
Yikes.
Can be a very problematic way to get green in your landscape. Although, of course, it is a classic and a great way to get a green wall. But, there's a time and a place for almost everything. Now, as a lot of people probably know, one of the first Proven Winners color choice shrubs that was introduced way back in the 1990s was the limelight hydrangea.
Mine are in full flower right now.
It's just a great time for them. And limelight is not today's plant on trial. But limelight is really hard to explain, to take people back to that moment and what limelight did to change the landscape in general in the U.S. and Canada. There really had never been anything like it. And it was an instant hit, so it was so different. There was really only two main panicle hydrangeas that people were growing at the time. They were tardiva and the original PG hydrangea, and both of those just flowered white and then maybe kind of sort of turned a little bit pink and then, just went on. And then along comes limelight, and it has these bright, vivid green flowers. It's an easy plant to produce. People just went crazy for it. I would say, it is almost certainly the most widely planted panicle hydrangea today, considering that it is all through the U.S. and Canada and Europe and really all around the world. I mean, this is a plant that's really taken the world by storm. People love it. And early in my career here, so we're talking about 14, 15 years ago, I was running the Proven Winners feedback form for shrubs. And I got a message from a home gardener that has really stuck with me to this day. And she was downright angry that limelight was green. Now, of course, yes, it is right there in the name. Limelight is so called because the flowers are lime colored. And she said, I bought this plant because everyone in my neighborhood has these hydrangeas flowering, and they're so beautiful, and they're white. And I just bought this one, and it's green. And if this thing is going to stay green, I am going to be really angry with you. And she then proceeds to say, in exactly these terms, no one wants green flowers. She says the leaves are green and flowers are supposed to be colorful.
Like Kermit said, it's not easy being green.
But, that really got me thinking about the fact that is as common as green is in foliage, among ornamental plants, green flowers are relatively uncommon.
That's very true.
So it makes them actually even more special, lady, because they're less common. I know when I first started gardening, I got super excited to grow a Rudbeckia that had just come out called Green Wizard. And it had green petals instead of yellow petals. And to this day, I find green flowers very, very interesting. Now, I don't really want to say that they're rare because certainly among trees, I think, are probably the biggest example. Lots and lots of trees have what would be considered green flowers, but those are not really ornamental flowers. They're, like a birch catkin is kind of green. The flowers on, your average Norway maple are green, and so on and so forth. So it's not uncommon for trees. But for ornamental plants, it is relatively uncommon to find green flowers. And that makes them even more special. And that is what makes today's plant on trial, which is Invincibelle Sublime hydrangea. So very special. Now, this is my absolute favorite. Well, tied for my favorite. The other one is Invincibelle Lace. Of all of our smooth hydrangeas. Now, full disclosure, of course, I can't grow it because I have deer. But if I could grow it, this would be one that I would grow.
Agree. I love that hydrangea. Now, there's a rumor, at least it's stuck in my head, that that's the hydrangea that replaced the one that was named after me, Limey Ricky or something like that. Is that what it was?
Ricky
Limey?
Lime Ricky.
Lime Ricky.
And, that plant came out before we started working together, but now I feel kind of bad that it has replaced Lime Ricky. It feels more personal than it did.
Obviously had an effect on me.
I'm so sorry, Rick. It was not personal. But Lime Ricky was a spectacular plant, and I loved Lime Ricky. So Lime Ricky hydrangea was sort of the predecessor to Invincibelle Sublime. And Invincibelle Sublime, we dropped it in favor of Invincibelle Sublime because the flower color on Sublime is just so vivid. And it was beautiful on Lime Ricky. Don't get me wrong. I loved that plant. But it's just so bright and so vivid, and the flowers are even bigger. And Lime Ricky actually won a very prestigious award from the Mount Cuba Center for Native Plants out in Maryland as a top performer. And that was top performer based on, its stem strength, its flowers, and its ability to serve pollinators and wildlife. So this is kind of the heir apparent to that, a little bit different than Lime Ricky, but still a fabulous plant. This is our native smooth hydrangea. Okay. And one of the things you'll notice, aside from the fabulous green flowers, is that the foliage is actually a different color of green compared to most smooth hydrangeas. And one of the reasons for that is because it is a subspecies of Hydrangea arborescens, or smooth hydrangea, subspecies radiata. And what that subspecies does is the foliage looks a little bit different, and it has a really nice silvery underside as well. Okay. So it's just kind of a fun little twist on it. So it makes the foliage almost like a dark black blue type of green. So then when these bright, fresh lime, and that they really do look like a fresh lime.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Flowers pop out. They really, really stand out from the plant. It is a mop head, but instead of being, really big and round like you think of with Incredible, the flowers are kind of more flat domes, but they're gigantic. They are very, very pollinator friendly. And one of the things that I love about this plant that is minor, and I know we're talking about green, but this still merits mentioning, is that the center of each floret is pink. So it just has this tiny little pink dot in it when they're fresh, and it just adds so much contrast. The flowers start off what I would perhaps refer to as a celadon green, or a pale jade green. And then as they open and mature, that's when they get to that bright, fresh, limey color. And then that's really going to persist and develop even some different marblings of paler green into it until really the first frost, or if it gets water stressed, the flowers might brown early. But so you have this really long display of green. And as the flowers become, as they age, they really do become more of a textural part of the garden rather than just a colorful part.
Oh, I love that. And the part that I love about it, Stacy, is the plant is great for many different zones. Even our friends in Canada, Minnesota, pretty cold hardy, right?
Yes. So like other smooth hydrangeas, it is hardy down to USDA Zone 3. So all of our smooth hydrangeas are, but unlike other smooth hydrangeas, it is also heat tolerant through USDA Zone 9.
Yeah, that's great.
So a lot of our other smooth hydrangeas, we only list as heat tolerant through about USDA Zone 8. Simply, they can grow, but they'll be stressed. It's hard. We don't want people to just have plants that live. We want plants that thrive. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to give people the information to get that. Well, Invincibelle Sublime is actually a heat tolerant through USDA Zone 9, probably most likely because of that radiata subspecies that is more prevalent in the south, so that probably gives it a little bit more heat tolerance. But of course, if you are in USDA zone 8 or 9, you're going to want to grow this in shade, especially during the hottest part of the day. That will just help the flowers last longer. And speaking of the flowers and lasting, the stem strength on this thing is unbelievable. I have never once seen a single stem on this thing flop. And just like Lime Ricky, I remember one day we had a 4-hour rainstorm, and I watched the water just pour out of the gutter over the Lime Ricky. And at the end of it, couldn't even tell.
Bounce back.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's, again, that
Resilient,
goes back to that.
like me.
Yes.
And that's what we learned today.
We're going to have to go deep into the archives and see if we can find a Lime Ricky for Rick.
Lime Ricky's retired, just like me.
Maybe it needs to be rewired.
All right.
But of course, it is not deer resistant. It does make a good cut flower, although it is a little bit on the larger side of that. Full sun is fine here in Michigan, especially if you can mulch it. Although, like I said, in warmer climates, definitely going to want some afternoon shade. Not exactly drought tolerant, so some regular moisture, some mulch will do a lot of good and really help this to be the eye-catching centerpiece of your green garden. I hope you will consider it for your garden, and if you do, you can find it at your local garden center. You can see photos of Invincibelle Sublime Hydrangea on the YouTube version, as well as at provenwinnerscolorchoice.com. We are going to take a little break. When we come back, we're opening up the mailbag, so please stay tuned. Greetings, gardening friends, and welcome back to the Gardening Simplified Show, where it is our time to help you with your gardening questions, quandaries, and conundrums and comments. Because we do love to hear from you, and if you have a comment to leave us, you can certainly do that. You can just go to gardeningsimplifiedonair.com. There is a contact button there. Or you can also leave it as a comment on the YouTube version. And speaking of YouTube, Adriana does an amazing job of making the YouTube version so much more interesting.
You're here.
Bringing in lots of photos. So if you're ever listening to us on radio or podcast and you're like, gee, I sure would like to see a picture of that, check us out on YouTube and you will get to see a picture of that. It's not just a YouTube video of us sitting in the studio in front of a background. There is some of that, but lots of cool stuff to see there. And we are always happy to try to help you the best that we can. And I felt like, I wanted to, first of all, start off a comment from a listener, Steve Nelson. And he says, we've been to Nelsonville. We drove all over to find a souvenir because our last name is Nelson. They didn't get a brick, but all he got was a shirt, and he enjoys listening to the show. Now, Adriana was, looking for the additional, stuff to put in to the YouTube version last week after your talk about Nelsonville and your presentation of a Nelsonville brick for my birthday, which was lovely. And she sent me a screenshot that the Nelsonville Brick Exchange takes place in the parking lot behind the McDonald's in Nelsonville, Ohio, which we both just thought was so funny. Like, it makes it sound like it's like a shady deal that they've got to do behind the McDonald's.
Oh, I love that.
So anyway, if you're headed to Nelsonville and looking for the Brick Exchange, it's behind the McDonald's.
I wonder if that is great. I wonder if Steve Nelson is related to the Ricky Nelson of I Went to a Garden Party fame.
Maybe.
That would be cool to know. And we also learned from the brick episode from our listeners and viewers that overcooked or wonky bricks are called clinkers.
Oh, I love clinker brick. Yeah, so in New York, there were definitely a lot of buildings that included clinker brick. It was kind of popular like in the 1910s to add some, unique texture. Clinker bricks are very, very cool. So I'm a fan.
Excellent.
All right, what do we got in the mailbag this week, Rick?
I'm thinking if I go to Nelsonville, I could get a senior coffee at the same time. That'd be great.
I mean, it sounds like you should really go. And, you might have some bricks that the people really are in demand down there.
All right. I'm going to do it. Stacy, let's see if you can help out. Brissette, I believe is the correct pronunciation. Help desperately needed for the second year. I noticed something has been eating my groundhog aronia. I've had that problem. And my firelight tidbit hydrangea. I've never been able to see anything on their leaves. However, because of the damage, the aronias are not growing. This is the second year in the ground from a quart-sized plant. They get new leaves, but are eaten, so not enough time for photosynthesis on the plants. Any idea what could be causing this? How to treat it? I'm desperate for my aronias to thrive.
Okay, well, Brissette did helpfully include some photos, and from what I can see in the photos that she sent, this is, to me, a pretty clear case of the black vine weevil.
Interesting.
So the black vine weevil is a weevil, which is a type of beetle. They're the kind that have the long, skinny snouts. They're actually pretty cute, even though they can be very destructive. But the black vine weevil leaves a very specific type of notching on the foliage. Now, they are known to adore rhododendrons, and that is where you most often see their damage. But they're also pretty, generalist type of feeders. And like I said, I'm pretty sure about this because that damage is just so distinctive to weevils. Now, it might not be black vine weevil specifically. It most likely is because they're common across the U.S. And the issue with the black vine weevil is not so much the damage that you're seeing on the foliage, but the fact that you are seeing that damage indicates that they are present and laying eggs there. And I am not going to say breeding, because I read, as I was researching this question for Brissette, that black vine weevils are parthenogenetic. There are no males.
Interesting.
And the females can lay fertile eggs. So all black vine weevils are females, and they lay fertile eggs without any males. So that is kind of a scary thought, because that means every single black vine weevil that you have in your yard is actually laying eggs and contributing to the problem. Now, a weevil, like I said, a type of beetle. So that means that its juvenile stage is a grub. So what you're basically seeing when you have black vine weevils, since they don't fly, is knowing that they are laying a bunch of eggs below the plant, and that those grubs are eating the roots of your plant. And that's what usually sets plants back from black vine weevil damage, not so much the notching that you're actually seeing on the foliage.
So as you contemplate solutions for this problem,
Yes.
debate between good and weevil, one thing I've done before with rhododendrons is I've put tanglefoot or a sticky substance on the stem.
Yep, that would work because they don't fly. They're just going to crawl right.
And then you'll know for sure.
Yes,
right?
because they'll get caught. That's a great idea. A sticky trap will also work. So the reason that you haven't seen them, Brissette, is because black vine weevils only feed at night. So it's one of those situations where people see this mysterious damage, like they think that, it's some sort of thing that's like flying in and out. It's not. They go back under the mulch during the day. But again, it's the grubs that you need to manage. It does help to trap the adults. That will help a lot. As for treating the weevils, that's a lot more or rather the grubs, that's a lot more difficult because, of course, they are underground. So I'm not exactly sure. I'm not going to give you any advice on using like a specific pesticide. You can reach out to your local cooperative extension on what they recommend for managing grubs. You can also just go down there and dig around and squish them. They aren't very deep in the soil. And you can just open it up and pull them out and squish them. I squish every grub, every small grub that I see in my garden when I'm working, because they're almost certainly like a Japanese beetle or an Asiatic garden beetle. I'm not killing anything that's interesting, so I just try to get those guys out of there. But again, the issue is with the roots. I think if you can do that, it should help. But also Rick wanted to comment that the aronia is a favorite of deer and rabbits.
Yeah, because that was my problem.
So don't also discount that. If you do have them around, they will eat those stems.
Jerry writes, my daughter Charisse, living in Dorr, Michigan, found this spider in her flower garden. Can you tell us what it is? Well, that's easy. Look it up on the web. And how we should deal with it. Is it dangerous? Should we leave it alone or help in the flowers? My wife Phyllis and I watch your YouTube posts every Saturday morning. Thank you for so many inspiring ideas and knowledge. Thank you,
sweet.
Jerry.
And I'm sorry, Rick, I didn't send you the picture that Jerry sent. It is my all-time favorite spider, the garden spider, Argiope aurantia. I love this spider. I have never yet been fortunate enough to have one take up residence in my yard. But this is kind of the outdoor spider that I think most everyone thinks of if they try to conjure up a spider in their head. It's pretty large. It's black with yellow and white stripes or kind of marbling on its abdomen. And they become especially visible at this time of year later in the season, because what has happened basically is that the little baby spiders have actually gotten big enough to be noticeable. Before, they were just kind of small and, hanging out. So at this point in the season, they start to get big, and you can walk out your garden and be like, whoa, what just happened? Another thing that makes these so distinctive is they construct what's known as a stablementia in the middle of the web, which is like a bunch of dense zigzagging. And there are a number of different theories as to why they do that. But overall, the general theory is that it is kind of like one of those decals that you put on your windows so birds don't fly into them.
Yeah. Wow.
So, the spiders are not obviously going to be able to catch birds. They're way too big, but they also don't want the bird to ruin their very carefully and beautifully constructed web. So they put that stablementia in the middle to be like, whoa, don't fly through here. And hopefully that works for them, because it's a lot of energy to build a web. But, Jerry, as you can probably tell from my enthusiasm for this beautiful spider, not harmful. I mean, yeah, if you really go in and mess with it, it might potentially bite you, but that's very unlikely to happen. They are going to kill a bunch of different insects in the garden. They are a web hunter, so basically they just wait for stuff to, fly into it, and then they'll wrap it all up and suck the juices out. They build a new web every single day. If it were me, I would simply relax and enjoy that the spider has chosen your yard. I know some people do get a little bit freaked out, but if you are freaked out, then what I would also recommend is find a friend who also loves spiders, and they will come and get it and make a home for it in their garden. That includes me.
Yeah, or just post the video online. You can watch on the webcam. I mean, if they're getting that big, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
like
beautiful spider, lucky Charisse, and hopefully she can appreciate it instead of being freaked out by it. Anyway, thank you all so much for your questions. We're going to take a little break right now, and when we come back, we're continuing our conversation on green, so please stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Gardening Simplified Show, as today we talk about the color green. Last night we had downpour rains. That was so nice. Took me back to the rainforest in Costa Rica. The rain was just pelting the leaves of my bananas and cannas. Really cool sound.
I noticed that last night too with my big alocasia out front. It was making a very interesting sound as the rain cascaded off the roof onto it and gave it some much needed water.
Had stuffed green peppers for dinner. That was nice. Which brings me to my dad joke of the day. Why didn't the green pepper practice archery? Because it didn't have an arrow. Moving on. Did you get that?
I did get that.
Is it that bad?
I mean,
I know it's a stretch. Okay.
Maybe hot pepper. Maybe why didn't the hot pepper? Maybe that would improve the joke.
Okay. The hot pepper didn't have a habanero.
I'm growing habanadas this year. You ever hear of those?
Really? Nice.
Yeah, so they're like habaneros, but they're not hot. So they have the flavor. They're very late to ripen, but they are very cool. And I'm about to have a ton of them.
I like that.
I'll bring you some.
I like that. Well, as you work on this monochromatic green garden, as a matter of fact, you mentioned in a previous segment, Stacy, the green cone flowers. If you go to Proven Winners website, look for green jewel cone flower. That's pretty cool. And for myself, of course, I love tulips. And any of the Virida Flora tulips that have the green streaks through them, like spring green, love that.
Those are so, so beautiful. And a lot of regular white tulips will have a little bit of green in them too, which is very refreshing looking.
Oh, and I love that. I love that combination of white and green because it's very classic. In the garden, I just think it's a great combination. Of course, hostas are made for the shade, and hostas come in every shade of green imaginable, huge variation in leaf sizes and shapes, so you're going to have to incorporate them in your green garden. Ferns, of course, can brighten up any dark corner and are a great choice for your green garden. Once established, they fill in quickly. And I know I just mentioned it, but again, Musa Bijou, the hardy banana. Wow, I cannot believe how fast that thing grows.
Nice.
I mean, it's up to my roof line now, so it's amazing. Cordyline, fruticosa. I love cordylines. Some people refer to them as tea plants. Some people call them Thai plants. I don't know. Whatever.
I just say cordyline.
There you go. But one of my favorites for the green garden and to add great green to your garden is alocasia. And Proven Winners has an elephant ear called Emerald Isle. I've grown 3 or 4 of those this year. Amazed at the performance of that plant. And Stacy, just the color green is so bright and it's so ruffled and textural. That really adds character to the landscape.
I love every single alocasia I've ever seen. And that goes for their cousins, colocasias and caladiums as well. You know, I have an alocasia that I've been putting on my front porch for, about 5 years now. So if you have one of these, they're super easy to overwinter. I basically just put it in the basement and it will wither back. And, sometimes if I think of it, I'll give it like maybe 1 or 2 waterings over the winter. But then come spring, put it outside, start watering it, and it just picks up like it never missed a beat. So if you do have Emerald Isle or another alocasia that you invested in, you don't have to just throw it away. And every year it gets bigger and better. And it's another great thing about it. And yeah, the green cannot be beat on those beautiful plants.
You bet. And with the banana tree, the Musa Bijou, just mulching it very heavily here in the north. So they'll die back to the ground, but boy, do they grow quickly.
You just mulch it and leave it in place? Wow, that's amazing.
But just that hardy banana.
Right.
You would not be able to do that like with Cavendish or some of the other varieties. Stacy, Fairy Trail Green Cascade Hydrangea, right? Has got to be on the list.
Definitely a very strong contender for plants on trial today, but and I love that one because like I was describing with Invincibelle Sublime, which was plants on trial, it has that great marbling. So it's not just like it's a plain green surface like, your average leaf, but it's multiple greens all kind of mixing and swirling together.
Going back to the alocasias and colocasias, some of them have a green that is so dark it almost looks black. Of course, we love coffee cups.
Yeah.
And even when you look at the houseplant area, ZZ plants. People love ZZ plants. So easy to care for, provided you don't overwater them. And I remember as a buyer for foliage plants for retail, we would buy a variety called Raven. And that's just, it looks black. It looks black. So that's amazing. And then you go to the other end of the spectrum with chartreuse plants, whether it be a chartreuse sweet potato vine, but just really helps add that full spectrum of green in your monochromatic garden. Stacy, of course, I'm glad you talked about hydrangeas because I love the green on hydrangeas.
They really are special. And there's just something I think about seeing those vivid, fresh greens when they bloom at the height of summer that just feels refreshing. Like it's like taking a drink of cold water.
You have to have some hellebores. And when we're looking at evergreens, Celtic Pride, microbiota, I just love that plant. Tater tot is so popular. Tortuga junipers. And Stacy, we have to mention and talk for a moment about boxwoods, because if you're going to have a green garden, you're probably going to have some boxwoods like Sprinter boxwood in there.
Boxwoods are the ultimate green choice. And, they're pretty much always appropriate. They always look great. And, some of the older varieties, especially, they can do what's called bronze in the winter, where their foliage will kind of take on some purpley brownish tones. It's totally normal. It does not mean that they're dying. Whereas other varieties are known to stay really, really green in the winter. So if that's a really important part of your landscape vision, you want to make sure you're picking one that stays green all winter.
Yeah, absolutely. Vegetable plants, of course, would have to be incorporated. Cucumbers. I have a picture of a cucumber trying to escape the compound this past week, making a getaway.
I think that's in the air right now as the vegetable garden is at peak. I've got stuff growing out of the fences in my vegetable garden as well. And it has been a great year for cucumbers. That is for sure.
If you're looking for texture in that green monochromatic garden, of course, I'm a big fan of grasses, but I want to mention specifically the graceful grasses, King Tut, or any kind of Egyptian papyrus, or if it's Prince, the shorter version, because not only do you get some vibrant green, but you get really cool texture too. So all important: kale, mint, sage, dill, basil, sweet peas, peppers, they all add an ornamental green feel to the landscape. And again, as you're looking at areas of monochromatic green, there's just this good, healthy, environmental feel that a garden like that gives. So why not incorporate some edibles?
Absolutely. And, thinking about basil and just even the basil that I have in my garden right now, I have 4 or 5 different types. It's amazing how different all of the greens are among them. The Thai basil is like a dark purpley green, whereas like the Italian basil is just the classic green. And you know what I was just saying over the weekend? My favorite color is August.
Oh, I like that.
Because of all the greens she got right now. It's fabulous.
I like that. I'm going to hang on to that. That's very good. That's very good. And you're right, Stacy. Again, all those different shades of green. I was just thinking about this lady in our neighborhood who makes Thai food. And I recognized her restaurant, and the reason I did, she's got a long row of 5-gallon buckets in front of the restaurant. And she has holes drilled in the bottom for drainage, and she has all different types of herbs, mint, and basil in those containers, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, they're very ornamental. I mean, I love growing basil, but
yeah, you bet. And if you want that really great green in your landscape, remember sometimes feeding is necessary. Nitrogen, magnesium, iron, sulfur. Of course, I love lawn fertilizers that use iron and sulfur. You don't get the fast growth, but they certainly give you a nice, dark, deep green to the turf. Iron deficiency symptoms become more prominent over time, and you'll just see that veining in the foliage where you have dark green veins but yellow between the veins, and many times iron deficiency or magnesium deficiency, they kind of look the same when you have that problem. But be looking at that, and remember, if you're going to apply some sort of supplement, make sure to take a look at the pH of the soil, because if the pH is too high, those supplements of iron or magnesium or sulfur probably aren't going to work. Well, there you go. We're giving people the green light today.
We sure did.
This was loads of fun. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Adriana, and thanks to all of you who watch us on YouTube, listen to our radio show version, or look for us where you find your favorite podcasts. Make sure to do that. Tell your friends and neighbors. Have a great week.